They do what? They score what? How? Uh, I'm sorry. I've been training and participating for 14 years and I didn't know that. What's up, guys? Laura Sanko here. So I had an idea that I wanted to start a series of videos that I'm going to post over the next, I don't know, maybe in perpetuity, because I think there's always something to be learned here, about MMA officiating. Now, as you may or may not know, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, became a licensed judge in the state of Missouri. Everybody was really funny. Everybody was really excited for me, which I thought was cool. But then immediately people were like, okay, when are you going to start judging fights? My purpose in becoming licensed didn't have anything to do with actually wanting to judge fights. First off, I have way too many conflicts in the state of Missouri because most of the time you can't judge fights where you know a fighter or you know the promoter, et cetera, et cetera. In Missouri, I know almost every fighter and every promoter, especially the ones that are near to where I live. So that really was not my intent in doing it. My intent in doing it was that I had an eye-opening moment when, and I don't even remember specifically what fight it was, but I remember it was a fight that I didn't understand why it was scored a certain way. And I started to really dig into the scoring criteria. And it was almost embarrassing because I sat there going, oh my gosh, I have been a fighter, I've been a reporter, I have been around this sport for since 2006. I've been participating in the sport heavily since 2006. And apparently I didn't know how it was judged. So not long after that, and this was a couple of years ago, not long after that, I was like, well, I got to fix this, especially, if I have these hopes and dreams and aspirations of being a commentator, I got to fix this. So I kind of went on a mission to really educate myself about judging and officiating. Now, before I get into this whole series, and this is the first video of this series, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I am not the end all be all expert in these things, even though I am a licensed judge now, and I have taken extended coursework to do that. It doesn't mean that I am not going to say something, or it doesn't mean that I am the end all be all expert. And as I'm learning, and as I'm taking more than one course, I'm learning that there's actually, to some frustrating extent, some gray areas in here. And I'll talk about that. But I guess my point is, I went on this journey because I wanted to be the best commentator I could be. I wanted to know specifically what I was talking about when someone would say, oh, well, how would you score that round, Laura? Now I know that I'm just going to say I didn't score that round because I didn't watch it as a judge. I watched it as a commentator, or I watched it as a fan. Totally different set of eyes. I'll probably do an entirely separate video on that, but I just want to set the table for why I did this. I wanted to be able to, I guess selfishly, I wanted to be able to have a little area of expertise that I could sort of call my own. So the UFC set up a course for all of the commentators and broadcasters to participate in, but it was about, I don't know, I think it was about 3 hours long, and it was very, very informative, and I certainly learned a lot. And one portion of that was actually having our own UFC stats people explain to us how the stats themselves are tallied, and what they constitute as a takedown and what they constitute as a significant strike. I will also be doing a video on that at some point. But point being, there was a limited amount of time spent on judging criteria and officiating over that period of time. I then went on to spend like another 8 hours of coursework. I had someone from the ABC, the Association of Boxing Commissioners, which is what MMA falls under, flew them to Kansas City. Shout out Kevin McDonald. Thank you for doing that. And he put me through the course, the official course, that I was not able to attend because I had a conflict with Contender Series. Regardless, I did another 8 hours there. I've also done Mark Goddard's course, and I've had long, bless his heart, he's been so patient. John McCarthy has spent a lot of time on the phone with me, as has Mark Goddard. So bless all of these individuals for helping me. I will point you to two men that I would consider to be some of the most up-to-date experts in this field. Sean Sheehan, he's all over Twitter, easy to find, and then Aaron Bronstetter from TSN, another guy that always gets it right in terms of judging, scoring, et cetera, et cetera. I'm in no way saying that this video or the videos that will follow thereafter are the best videos on these topics. To be honest with you, to some degree, it's my own. I want to do this for myself so that I can stay fresh and up to date, because like with anything, I took a test on it, aced the test, but then a couple months later, I'm like, now how did that go again? So it's part of my reason for doing this is to not only share the information, but to keep the information fresh in my own mind as well. So the video that I want to, or the topic that I want to start with today, is the most basic topic of all when it comes to the judging criteria, and that is touching on the three main criterion and the order in which you score them. Now, if you're watching my channel, I'm guessing that you probably know these because they're read at the beginning of every UFC fight. I'm also guessing that you probably already know the basics of what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway in case there's someone out there who's going to end up watching all of these videos. I want to at least start at the very beginning. So forgive me if you're like, well, that wasn't very informative. She didn't tell me anything that I knew. I will get there to the point where I tell you some stuff you don't know, either in this video or future videos, because yeah, there were definitely moments where I was like, they do what? They score what? How? Uh, I'm sorry. I've been training and participating for 14 years and I didn't know that. So I promise you will have some aha moments, just maybe not in this video. So let me read these criteria for you quickly, because it's not hard to find. First of all, it's on the ABC website. And again, ABC, Association of Boxing Commissions. You can find it right on there. Just Google unified rules, and then the judging criteria are in the rule set. So let me read this to you. All right. All bouts will be evaluated and scored by a minimum of 3 judges. The 10-point must system will be the standard of scoring a bout. Under the 10-point must system, 10 points must be awarded to the winner of the round, and 9 points or less should be fewer. I'm such a grammar. 9 points or fewer must be awarded to the loser, except for a rare even round, which is scored 10-10. And I will eventually do a video on what is a 10-10 round. Okay. Here we go. Judges shall evaluate mixed martial arts techniques such as effective striking/grappling, which is plan A, effective aggressiveness, which is what they call plan B, and control of the fighting area. This used to be called octagon control. It's not called that anymore. It's control of the fighting area, plan C. Plans B and C are not taken into consideration unless plan A is weighed as being even. So let me just finish reading this, then I'll explain. Evaluations shall be made in the specific order in which the techniques appear above, giving the most weight in scoring to effective grappling/striking. So those are together. It's not that grappling is more and striking is less, or vice versa. Striking and grappling are held to this, are scored on the same level. It's not, there's no, oh, strikes are more important than subs. That's not the case at all. Giving the most weight to scoring to effective striking, grappling, then effective aggressiveness, and then control of the fighting area. Effective striking is judged by determining the impactful/effect of legal strikes landed by a contestant solely based on the results of such legal strikes. Effective grappling is assessed by the successful execution and impactful effective results coming from takedowns, submission attempts, achieving an advantageous position, and reversals. That one gets complicated, and we're going to go into that in more detail. But in this video, I really just want to get across the point that you have plan A, you have plan B, and you have plan C. It's not that those 3 things are thought of at the same time. Absolutely not. In fact, 95, maybe even 99% of rounds will be judged using that number, that first level of criteria only. And the only time that you start to assess whether there were differences in effective aggressiveness is if the effective striking and grappling between the two fighters were, in your mind, even, completely even. And then you can look at aggressiveness, and then you look at fighting area control. Almost never do you get to the point where you're judging fighting area control. So, although I, as a commentator, will often talk about putting someone on the back foot, for instance, or corralling someone against the octagon, those are important techniques to use as a fighter, but they are not scoring unless everything else goes out the window. And that's pretty much never the case. So I'm just going to say it as definitively as I can without 100% saying it definitively. When I'm talking about that stuff, it's not for the purposes of scoring. It's for the purposes of looking at it through the eyes of a commentator, which is to inform the audience about the technique and strategy of the people in the fight. So I don't know. I'm probably going to end up doing a lot of videos because there are so many rabbit holes to go down. Because I remember when I read these, I was like, well, okay, well, what do they mean by effective striking and effective grappling? And this is where I think a lot of people get into, I guess, disagreements, particularly on the grappling side, because as I will get into in future videos, effective grappling is not taking people down. It is taking people down and then doing something with it. It's taking people down and landing ground and pound. It's taking people down and looking for submission attempts. All other things being equal. And there are a lot of exercises that we can do in this video series. I think it'll be interesting for people to see, because although a lot of times the hypotheticals that you'll throw out there are ridiculous and would never exist in reality, they're important for highlighting the spirit behind a rule rather than the letter of the rule. And that, when it comes to judging, is so important, because, and that's probably my biggest takeaway that I want you guys to have from this video. Two things. Number one, MMA is judged purely as an offensive sport. No defensive tactics, maneuvers, fight IQ, nothing that goes into that column of defense matters one iota to those judges. Does it matter to the fight? Absolutely. Does it matter to me as a commentator? Absolutely. Does it matter to the judges? Absolutely not. So that's one major way in which you, as a fan, or whoever you are, maybe you're a fighter also, participating in the sport, when you're watching a fight, you're not watching it the same way that a judge watches it, which is why sometimes you're like, oh, the freaking idiots. Da, 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 da. And I've been in those same boats. And I'm not saying that there are not bad judges. There are bad judges out there. And at some point we can, I want to show some rounds that were judged very poorly. But then I want to take a look at some rounds that a lot of people thought were judged poorly, but were not judged poorly. They're just, they're gray. And that's the problem. So that's the first thing I want you to take away, is that MMA is 100% an offensive sport. Number two, and this was really hard for me to kind of accept, because I like things to be black and white, especially when they produce black and white endings. The ending to a fight is black and white. You win or you lose. I guess you could also have a draw, but point being, like, there are very defined, this is the result. You won, you lost, there was a draw. The judging of an MMA fight does not work like that, as much as I would love it to. And that was probably the most frustrating exercise for me to go through in taking both the ABC certification course. I took Mark Goddard's course. I took the UFC course. And as I said, I had many, many hours on the phone with Big John, who helped write these rules. I consider him to be one of the more foremost experts. And lots of back and forths with Sean Sheehan. Regardless, not everyone sees things the same way. And that is why judging will always be somewhat subjective. There will always be interpretation involved. There will always be point of view involved. There will always be background involved. As much as you try to take that out of the equation, it's just there. It's human beings looking at an expression of art/violence, applying a rule set as best they can and then coming up with an answer in a matter of seconds, which is why the judges at the UFC level are some of the best in the world. So MMA is purely judged offensively, nothing defensive counts whatsoever. The three main criterion are not equal. They are only judged in specific order, and almost never, ever, 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 ever do you judge fighting area control. And 99 times out of 100, you're also not judging aggressiveness. So really what the fight comes down to is who had the more effective, or what the round comes down to, I should say, who had the more effective grappling and striking. And we'll get into what that looks like in another video, but I just wanted to set the table. And like I said, unfortunately, it's a lot of gray because we're dealing with people. The other thing I want to point out along the lines of subjectivity and gray matter, one of the aha moments I had was, and I guess it's not rocket science, but I'll explain when I had the aha moment. You can't judge what you can't see. A judge cannot judge what he or she cannot see. And at the UFC level, that is pretty well, the negative effects of that are pretty well mitigated because they have monitors in each of their judging stations. So, first of all that BS of like, oh my gosh, he was looking down. He was probably on his phone, not even watching the fight. No, he's looking at his monitor. Okay. These are professionals who, frankly, don't get paid that much. This is very often a labor of love because they love the sport. There's not a lot of glory in it, and there's certainly not a lot of thank yous in it. So, I'm not saying a judge has never looked at his or her phone, but when they're looking down, they're looking at their monitors. At the UFC level, there should not be these instances where they can't see a submission technique in particular can be difficult because of where they're seated. So when you think about it, a judge doesn't have the ability to get up and walk around. And I find myself in this situation all the time as a commentator. I'm wanting to talk through the action, but I don't want to say something wrong where, for instance, if a fighter is caught up in a choke and I can't see if they're fighting the choking hand or no, they're not fighting the choking hand, I don't want to start talking about it until I can see that for sure what I'm going to say is going to make sense based on what's really happening. And sometimes the camera angles are just such that it doesn't exist. The judges have that same issue. And take away the UFC level and go down even one level from that, they don't always have monitors. It's not required for judges to have monitors. And they are sometimes positioned where a turnbuckle may prevent them from having a line of sight. So, for instance, during my judging test, I had to score a load of rounds, and a lot of them were meant to be very tricky rounds to score. And one of them was from a regional show, and the camera was filmed from the point of view of one of the judging spots, and I'm not even kidding you, the entire round was spent where all you could see was this guy who was tripoded up over his opponent, who initially had kind of like sunk in a guillotine, but it wasn't a very good guillotine when they sunk down. But he was still slumped over, kind of like he was caught in the guillotine, but you had no way of knowing. I had no visibility to it. All you can see is this guy's butt. And as much as I wanted to, as a fighter, guess about what was going on down there, and I could see him kind of like doing this a little bit. I mean, the punches were barely landing. So I know he's still caught in enough of a guillotine that he can't get out. But here's the thing, as a judge, I cannot score what I cannot see. I cannot make up in my head that he's caught in a guillotine because I don't know that. And I don't know that not because I'm an idiot, but because of where I'm sitting. So I guess that's the third takeaway I want to have from this video, is that sometimes, just allow this thought to sink in. Sometimes when we're looking at those scorecards after a fight and that one idiot scored that one round differently than the other two judges, Sometimes it's possible that that one idiot isn't an idiot and that he or she simply had the disadvantage of not having the proper line of sight. As much as I love calling people, and I don't actually love calling people idiots, but lots of people love to call people idiots on Twitter. And it's fun to like stir things up and be controversial, whatever. But my point is, it's not always the case. The most exciting take is not always the correct take. A lot of that issue, as I've said, is mitigated in the UFC because the UFC does provide monitors, but other promotions are not always able to do that. And when the UFC goes on the road, I don't know that they're always able to have the big monitors like they do in the Apex. So just keep in mind that the judges are limited by their line of sight and they cannot judge. They're not allowed to judge things that they cannot see, which you wouldn't want them to do. You don't want them making stuff up in their head like, oh, it looked like an elbow. I think it was an elbow. Oh, I'm gonna say it was an elbow in my head. No, you need to be able to see the technique in order to judge the technique. So I guess that's my third takeaway from this video. This ended up being way longer than I wanted it to be, but that's probably going to be part of the course for these videos. Hope you guys enjoyed. There will be many more of these to come because there's lots of interesting rabbit holes to go down. Comment below what judging and or officiating topic you would like me to tackle next. I probably will do I want to work our way through the criteria first before we start going down the really obscure rabbit holes. So I probably will do a video on what constitutes effective grappling and effective striking. Um, I want to do a video on 10-10 and 10-8 rounds. And then, yeah, we can go from there. But I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully this was mildly informative. Regardless, appreciate you guys. If you like the video, please click like and please tell your friends, family, cousins, second cousins to subscribe. I appreciate it. See you guys next time.